Hey, I just wanted to go over a little bit of chapter 10. Hopefully you can use this video to help you study over the break. And it's getting kind of overwhelming, so I hope I can condense a little bit of information. I definitely want you guys to still read in the book. I'm kind of like summarizing a lot of it, and I'm not giving you all the details, just the ones I think is most important, but that doesn't mean that you don't know the other ones. Anyway, so I just wanted to make this video, just going over a couple things. I hope it's helpful. And I hope it saves you some time so you can have some time relaxing. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to go over were it's kind of the pattern that we have in the autonomic nervous system after the neurons leave the spinal cord. So in the somatic motor system or skeletal muscle, we had a pattern of after we left the spinal cord, these little like bubble things are the spinal cord, and now they're really beautiful. It's really hard to draw here. So basically, you're just going to leave the spinal cord, and it's just really one long neuron before you get to your muscle cell on the other side. So MC for muscle cell. So that's like skeletal muscles, so voluntary movements. Whereas your autonomic system, we're going to have two neurons after the spinal cord. So it's going to be just have a lot of different synapses. Polysynaptic is probably what the book called it. And so I'm just going to go through two different patterns that you need to know, the sympathetic and parasympathetic. There's a chart, I believe it's under 10.1.3 if I remember correctly. It tells you the same information. This is just a picture version of it. So if you like pictures, it works better. Either way, it works. So sympathetic, it has a pattern of a short preganglionic neuron and a long postganglionic neuron. So between the two neurons, you're going to release acetylcholine from the preganglionic neuron, and then a nicotinic type 2 receptor is going to accept the acetylcholine, which is then going to cause an action potential to go down the postganglionic neuron. After we get to the end of the postganglionic neuron, it's going to release norepinephrine, or NE, as its neurotransmitter. And norepinephrine can bind to an alpha-1, alpha-2, beta-1, beta-2, beta-3. And part of this chapter is knowing what kind of receptor it's going to bind to. And then parasympathetic, it's going to do the opposite. So we have a long preganglionic neuron and a short postganglionic neuron. Between the two neurons, they're going to do the exact same thing. Acetylcholine is going to bind to nicotinic type 2. At the end of your postganglionic, you're going to again release acetylcholine, which can then combine to a nicotinic receptor or muscarinic receptors. So to help you know when it's going to bind to what, I kind of made this chart. It's kind of a flow chart, I guess, in a way. It just helps me realize like what's going to happen when. So this chart, so there's a sympathetic side and a parasympathetic side. Sympathetic is your rest and digest, whereas that's parasympathetic. Parasympathetic is fight or flight idea. So these first three words that are on there are ways, words that kind of tip me off on what we're talking about. So if in a word problem they talk about parasympathetic or cholinergic or acetylcholine, I know we're talking about parasympathetic. So I know we're going to use receptors on this side. So any answer that has alphas and betas in it, I know we're wrong. So I can just mark those off. Say opposite, we're talking about adrenergic receptors, sympathetic, and I'm going to be on this side, so mark any answers from over here off. And then you kind of need to, you have to know what each organ system is going to do under a parasympathetic response and a sympathetic response in order to know whether you contract or relax during this. So I just wanted to go over 10.3 super duper quickly. You still have to read it and get to know it. But just to kind of give you an idea of what's going to happen. So 10.3 is the organ systems, what you need to know. And it starts out with the eyes. In the eyes, there are three muscles that you need to know. The first is called the dilator pupillae. And the dilator pupillae does what it sounds like it's going to do. It's going to dilate your pupil. It's going to dilate your pupil in a sympathetic response. And the reason why, so if you're getting chased by a bear in the middle of the woods, you're going to want to let enough light in that you can see everything around you. So you don't trip and fall and the bear is going to catch you. So dilator pupillae is a sympathetic response. And how it opens your pupil is it contracts. So the dilator pupillae muscle is going to contract. And it's sympathetic, so we're going to put it on the sympathetic side under contraction. And then we have another muscle called the sphincter pupillae. Now, sphincter pupillae muscle does the exact opposite of this dilator pupillae. It's going to contract your pupillae or make it smaller. And this is a parasympathetic response. And the way it does this is the sphincter pupillae is also going to contract. So over here, we're going to put sphincter pupillae. Maybe if I can sail. So those are those two muscles we're going to do. And then you have something called a ciliary muscle. The ciliary muscle has a parasympathetic response and a sympathetic response. So we're going to go over both of those, but it's important to know that your ciliary muscle is in charge of the shape of your lens and how thick or thin it's going to be. So in a sympathetic response, you are going to want to be able to see far. Again, if we're getting chased by this bear, we're going to want to know where we're running to, what's in front of us, and where we can run for safety. So what's going to happen is our sphincter muscle, our ciliary muscle is going to relax, which is going to cause our it's going to cause our lens to become flat and stretched out. And when it becomes flat, we can see far. So I just want to put flat, not fat, flat, see far. So the F's go together. Flat and far go together. And then that's a ciliary muscle in a sympathetic response. In a parasympathetic response, we're going to want to see a lot closer. I don't really need to see very far. If all I need to do is put my fork in my mouth. I just need to see really close. So I'm going to make my lens thicker. And to do that, I'm going to contract my ciliary muscle. I'm going to contract it in this parasympathetic response. And then, let's see. So those are the three muscles for the eye you need to know. The next is for the blood vessels. The blood vessels are a little different. They have a parasympathetic response and sympathetic response, but they're both technically sympathetic responses. So if we don't really need a lot of blood in our organs and we need our blood pressure to go up, we are going to have vasoconstriction. That's just going to make our blood vessels smaller. Whereas if we need a lot of oxygen to different muscles and we need them be open, allowing blood to go to different places, we're going to vasodilate our blood vessels. So if we're talking about vasodilating, we're going to use relaxation for muscles. Whereas if we want to constrict them, we're going to use contraction ones. Yeah. Yeah, so those are the blood vessels. The next we have is the sweat glands. Sweat glands are also really weird. I would recommend, again, reading the book and figuring out why they're weird. But with sweat glands, you have something called generalized sweating, which is like when you're really hot and you're just sweating anywhere and everywhere to release that heat. And that is called generalized sweating. And for generalized sweating, you are going to use, so for generalized sweating, you are going to use a parasympathetic response. Generalized sweating. And this is actually a sympathetic response. If you think about it, we don't really sweat. We're just like resting and digesting. Sweating is more of a fight or flight. We're trying to keep our homeostasis in balance. But we use acetylcholine in this, so we have to use acetylcholine receptor. So we're going to stimulate our sweat glands in general and sweating with like muscarinic receptors. Whereas with sympathetic response, we're going to have more like a stress sweat. So that's like when your palms of your hands are sweaty, your armpits, things like that, when you're like really stressed out. And so we're going to use, and that stress sweat is called localized sweating. And again, we are going to stimulate our sweat glands. The heart is a little bit more normal. The heart has a sympathetic response and a parasympathetic response again. So sympathetic response, if you think about if you're being chased by a bear, your heart rate is going to increase. So our heart is going to be stimulated to beat a lot faster. Whereas in a parasympathetic response, we don't really need our heart to be beating that fast. It just needs to be a constant rate. And so that you're going to relax our heart in a parasympathetic response and allow our heart rate to decrease. Our lungs, we're going to talk about our airways here. So in a parasympathetic response, we're not going to need a lot of air. We're just kind of like sitting eating dinner or sitting on the couch watching Netflix. We don't really need a lot of air, so our airways are going to constrict just because we don't need as much air. Just put lungs so you guys know where I'm getting this from. Whereas in a sympathetic response, if we're running for our lives, we need a lot of air to help us get oxygen to our muscles so that they can move. So our airways are going to relax and become bigger. And so we're going to use a relaxing transmitter there. Yeah. So those are the things. The last thing we have is our stomach. So in our stomach, we have something called the sphincter muscle. And the sphincter muscle is at the bottom, and it separates our stomach from our small intestines where we have digestion. If we are in a fight or flight situation, we're not going to want to digest and stuff. We're going to want to use that energy to run for our lives. So that sphincter muscle is going to contract and close so that no food can make it to the small intestines to be like digested. We're not going to want to use energy there. So that's going to contract so that no food gets there. Whereas like if we're just sitting down chilling, we want to like digest that. We want to get that energy and we want to break it down and get it out of it. So you're going to relax that sphincter muscle so that's sucking up from our stomach to our small intestines to be digested. So this is going to be our stomach sphincter. So this is like a really broad overview of chapter 10. I'm just kind of going through it. I would try to memorize this chart the best you can and just use it to work out problems. You're also going to have to know drugs. So agonists are going to aid whatever receptor is. So if it's an alpha-1 agonist, it's going to make whatever alpha-1 is doing. So, so if it's with the dilator pupillae and we're using an alpha-1 agonist, we're going to make the dilator pupillae work more effectively. We're going to make it so it can dilate the eye even more. Whereas if we're using an alpha-1 antagonist, it's going to block that receptor, making it so we can't even dilate the pupillae. Or like dilate the pupil with a dilator pupillae. So I would just quiz yourselves over the break on like, oh, what kind of receptor would this organ use? Okay, what if I was using this kind of drug to stop it? If I was using an agonist or an antagonist, what would it do? Again, that only probably takes about 15 minutes a day, but it will help you a lot. So I hope that this was helpful and you got some information out there and you know where to start studying. And have a great weekend and good luck with everything.